It was a crisp autumn afternoon in downtown New York, and the shiny glass windows of Hamilton and Royce Luxury Motors gleamed under the warm sun. Inside the dealership, the atmosphere was sleek, fast-paced, and bustling with high-end clientele eager to make deals. The sales team moved with practiced precision, guiding their customers through rows of gleaming, brand-new luxury cars. In the midst of this polished environment, the sound of the heavy glass door swinging open broke the rhythm of the showroom. A hunched figure entered, an elderly man, bent with age, his back curved in a way that suggested years of hard labor, but his eyes held a certain spark, a gleam of something fierce beneath the frailty of his appearance. He wore a simple jacket, frayed at the cuffs, his hands trembling slightly as he grasped a small, weathered canvas bag. The sales managers, clustered near the front desk, exchanged quick glances, sizing up the newcomer. The man shuffled forward, his steps slow but deliberate. The showroom, usually filled with the hum of soft conversations and the occasional engine rev, seemed to grow quieter, as though the room itself was waiting for something. But the managers, used to dealing with clients dripping in wealth, paid little attention. They assumed, no doubt, that this man was just another old soul lost in the glimmering world of luxury, a distraction, perhaps, or even a vagrant. He placed his bag on the floor beside him and began to survey the vehicles with a calm, unhurried manner. There was a kind of reverence in the way his eyes moved from one car to the next, each one carefully inspected, as though he were searching for something far beyond the steel and leather of these machines. His hands gently grazed the curves of the vehicles, his fingertips brushing against the flawless paint jobs and gleaming chrome. It was then that he stopped, standing in front of the most expensive car in the showroom, an elegant, midnight blue Rolls-Royce Phantom, the kind of car that was the epitome of wealth and power, the kind that graced the driveways of billionaires. The elderly man pointed at the car with a trembling finger, his voice breaking the silence as he asked, "May I see the interior?" The sales manager closest to him, Mark, a sharply dressed, young man in his 30s, looked the old man up and down, his eyes narrowing with a hint of impatience. He sighed, leaning forward with a professional yet condescending smile. "I'm afraid that car's already been reserved for someone else," Mark said dismissively. "And to be honest, sir, its price has increased recently. It's out of your price range." The elderly man didn't flinch. Instead, he simply nodded, as if he had expected the response. But before he could turn away, Mark's expression shifted to one of mild annoyance. He nodded subtly to a security guard who had been watching from the corner of the showroom. The guard approached, his baton in hand, a silent enforcer of the dealership's unwritten rules. "Sir," the guard said curtly, "I'm going to have to ask you to leave." The elderly man stood there for a moment, his face softening with the weight of this injustice. There was a flicker of hurt in his eyes, but he did not argue. With a quiet nod, he turned and walked out of the showroom, his movements slow, as though the weight of his disappointment had drained him. The door shut with a soft thud behind him, and the showroom returned to its usual buzz. But the managers, who had dismissed the old man without a second thought, didn't realize what they had done. Not yet. The next morning, as the dealership opened its doors to another busy day, a lone figure appeared at the entrance. The glass doors slid open with a soft swish, and the elderly man returned, but this time, he wasn't hunched over. He stood straight, his back no longer curved with age, his step more assured. He was dressed in a sharp, tailored suit, the kind you would expect to see on a man who had just stepped out of a high-powered boardroom, not a humble, weathered soul who had been kicked out of a showroom just the day before. The suit was gray, almost silver, and it shimmered slightly under the dealership's lights. His shoes were polished to a mirror shine, and his hair, though gray, was combed neatly. He strode toward the front desk, where Mark and his colleagues were chatting about the day's sales. As he approached, Mark looked up and froze. The elderly man's transformation was startling. But it wasn't just his appearance that caught Mark off guard, it was the calm, quiet confidence that radiated from him. "I'm here to buy the car," the old man announced in a steady, strong voice. Mark blinked. "I'm sorry?" The old man reached into his bag, pulling out a thick stack of cash, the bills bound together with rubber bands. His hands were steady now, no tremble, no sign of weakness. He opened the bag wide for everyone to see. It was full of money, hundreds, thousands. Cash, he said quietly, "I'll take the car and I'll pay in full." Mark's face flushed with embarrassment, his professional mask cracking for just a second. The other sales managers who had gathered nearby watched in stunned silence. Without a word, the elderly man walked over to the Rolls-Royce Phantom. He ran his fingers over the smooth leather seats, his expression softening with nostalgia and reverence. It was clear now that this wasn't just a purchase for him, it was the fulfillment of a long-held dream, a final act of love for someone he had cherished deeply. "Sir," Mark stammered, his voice unsteady, we didn't know. We assumed ... The old man raised a hand, silencing him gently. "Assumptions are dangerous," he said. "They cost more than you realize." As the young manager took the cash and finalized the transaction, something shifted in the room. The other staff members, who had once dismissed this man, now saw him for who he truly was, a man of dignity, love, and determination. He wasn't just some old man off the street. He was someone who had a purpose, a mission. When the transaction was complete, the elderly man took the keys to the Phantom, his eyes glistening with tears that he didn't try to hide. He drove away from the dealership in a car that wasn't just a symbol of wealth, but of a final wish fulfilled, of a love that transcended time. The next morning, word spread throughout the dealership. The old man had fulfilled his wife's last wish. She had always dreamed of owning a car like that. But she had fallen ill, and the man had made the heartbreaking decision to sell their home to raise the money. He had come to buy the car not for himself, but for her, as a tribute to the woman he had loved and cared for all these years. A week later, Mark found a small note tucked into his desk. It was from the elderly man, who had left a simple message. "Thank you for allowing me to make her dream come true. You'll never know how much it means." As Mark read the words, he felt a lump rise in his throat. He had judged too quickly. The elderly man wasn't just a customer, he was a reminder of what truly mattered: love, sacrifice, and the ability to see beyond the surface. The managers of Hamilton and Royce Luxury Motors never forgot that lesson. And every time they saw a car roll out of the showroom, they remembered the old man's quiet strength, the weight of his love, and the lesson that sometimes appearances are not what they seem. In the weeks that followed, the Hamilton and Royce Luxury Motors dealership experienced a shift in its culture. The staff, particularly Mark, found themselves reflecting on the elderly man's visit. At first, the encounter seemed like a one-off anomaly, a strange, almost surreal experience. But as time passed, it became clear that the lesson of that day wasn't just about sales, wealth, or even luxury cars. It was about empathy, understanding, and the unseen depth of human lives. Mark, in particular, couldn't shake the memory of the old man's words. "Assumptions are dangerous. They cost more than you realize." One evening, as Mark sat in his office, reviewing his sales figures, the words echoed in his mind. He stared at the report in front of him, then slowly set it aside. That moment in the showroom, when he had looked at the elderly man with disdain, suddenly felt like a turning point in his life. He realized that he had been too focused on the superficial aspects of his job, the numbers, the luxury, the prestige. But now, something had changed in him. He felt a newfound responsibility to treat people not based on their appearance, but on the human stories they carried. A few weeks later, Mark found himself walking through the dealership early one morning, preparing for another busy day of high-end sales. As he passed the showroom floor, he noticed something different. The cars, the polished surfaces, the gleaming lights, all of it felt secondary now. In fact, he could hardly remember the last time a sale had made him feel truly satisfied. But then, a young woman walked in. She was impeccably dressed, but there was an air of sadness about her. Mark noticed her from across the room, her eyes scanning the cars. But there was no excitement in her gaze. Instead, it was a quiet determination. She wasn't here to enjoy the luxury of the showroom. She was here for something else. He approached her slowly, but instead of launching into his usual sales pitch, he simply asked, "Is there something I can help you with?" The woman hesitated for a moment, as if unsure of how to answer. Finally, she spoke. "I'm looking for something special," she said softly. "Something that's not for me. For my husband." Mark's interest peaked. "What kind of car does he like?" She looked at him with a faint, bittersweet smile. "He doesn't care about cars, but I do. I want to buy him something he's never been able to afford. He's been so sick for so long, and now he doesn't have much time left. I want to give him something that will make him feel alive again, even if just for a moment." Mark's heart tightened. It was the same story, the same selfless love that the elderly man had shared when he purchased the Rolls-Royce. He could feel the weight of the woman's words, and without thinking, he said, "I think I know just the car." That day, Mark made a decision. He wasn't just going to sell cars anymore. He was going to help people create memories. He walked over to his manager, Sarah, and shared his thoughts. She was initially skeptical, but soon came to realize that something deeper was happening here. Over the next several weeks, Mark and Sarah implemented a new approach at the dealership. They started offering personalized consultations where customers could share their stories, their dreams, and their motivations for buying a car. The dealership wasn't just a place for transactions anymore, it became a place for people to find meaning, a place where luxury could symbolize something far greater than status. They even introduced a new policy, Dreams Drive Us, which encouraged customers to share their personal stories, just as the elderly man had done. And to Mark's surprise, many customers, whether wealthy or not, found themselves opening up about their lives, their struggles, and their triumphs. It was in this environment that Mark learned the true meaning of luxury. It was not just about the price tag, but the heart behind the purchase. The car was often just the symbol. What mattered most was the love, sacrifice, and dedication that drove people to make such decisions. Months passed and life at Hamilton and Royce continued to change for the better. But one day, a familiar figure appeared again. The elderly man returned to the dealership, this time without the suit. He was dressed simply, but there was an unmistakable air of pride about him. The dealership staff recognized him immediately, and Mark, who was now managing the floor, made his way toward him. The old man smiled when he saw Mark, his eyes glistening with a sense of quiet satisfaction. "I've come to say thank you," the elderly man said, his voice thick with emotion, "for not only helping me fulfill Catherine's dream, but for changing the way I see people. I've seen you make people's lives better. It's not just about cars for you anymore, is it?" Mark swallowed hard, nodding, "No, it's not just about cars. It's about people, and I owe you that lesson." The elderly man reached into his bag and pulled out an envelope, handing it to Mark. Inside, there was a letter from his wife, Catherine, who had passed away just a few weeks earlier. She had written it in the final days of her illness, urging her husband to live with purpose, to continue to pursue his dreams, and to always be kind to others. "You've done more than I could have ever imagined," the old man said. "Catherine would be proud of what you've built here. Thank you for helping me make her final wish come true." After the elderly man left, Mark stood there for a moment, holding the letter. He realized that the impact of that single encounter had stretched far beyond the walls of the dealership. It had inspired not just him, but an entire community. The ripple effect of that man's love for his wife, his humble wisdom, and the deep bond they had shared had transformed everything. At the dealership, they continued to celebrate Dreams Drive Us not just as a marketing campaign, but as a way of life. Every customer that walked through the door was treated with the same respect and kindness that Mark had once overlooked. Sales numbers went up, yes, but so did the satisfaction of the team and the customers. And more than anything, The spirit of kindness and empathy lived on in every interaction. Years later, when the dealership was sold to a new owner, the staff and the community knew that the legacy of that elderly man, his kindness, his love, and his belief in fulfilling dreams would never be forgotten. Mark, now a seasoned manager, stood outside the showroom one last time before handing over the keys to the new owners. He looked down at the envelope the old man had given him and smiled. It was a reminder that no matter how much time passed, the real treasures in life were the moments of love and compassion we shared, the way we touched each other's lives, and the dreams we dared to make real. And so, Hamilton and Royce Luxury Motors became more than just a dealership. It became a place where dreams truly did drive us in, and where the heart behind each decision mattered far more than the price tag.